Hey everybody, it is Josh here from the Leeds Lounge. I have literally rushed home from work. I have taken some notes on my dinner break today because Farke's press conference happened at 1:30 this afternoon ahead of this weekend's game away against Norwich. So I've just got my notes down here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm trying to do. And if you see me pausing, it's because I can't see because I need glasses, but I refuse to get my eyes tested. That's on me, but we're going to get straight into the video, so let's go. So, another press conference from Daniel Farke ahead of our away game this weekend against Norwich. A lot was said, not a lot really to report that we didn't already know. We'll start off injuries, Gnonto's in team training, and a topic for this weekend, so that's another good offset there for the wings. Shaq's in team training as well, also a topic for the weekend and maybe included, which makes me really happy because then we don't have to sit through Ayling all game. What else? Firpo in training since Tuesday, but not on the radar for any sort of team selection anytime soon. But again, positive that he's back. Dallas obviously been out for a very, very long time, so he's been very, very careful with Dallas there. He is back part training and trying to get integrated. So maybe after Christmas. He didn't say after Christmas, but he said like 4 to 5 weeks. So I'm thinking with the international break and stuff, probably after Christmas, that we'll start hearing talks about Dallas if we do, unless he injures himself again. And also, Spence is still out, and Farke thinks another sort of 2 weeks. So not far then for Spence. I was hoping that Spence would be back in for these next 5 games that we've got before the November international break. However, we've been looking pretty solid anyway, so that's not worrying me too much there. It's just a really good choice to have when he is fit and he does come back in. So that was basically everything basically everything on the injury list. So no new injuries again, so that's always a W. So we can stay happy that we probably know what team he's going to play on Saturday. So he was then asked what he's been doing for the last couple of weeks, and he said mainly working basically on reintegrating sort of with Shaq and with Gnonto. Obviously, you know, they've been out for a little bit, Gnonto a bit longer than Shaq obviously has. So he's basically been working on making sure that they stay fit within training, but at least getting back up to fitness, reintegrating them with the squad, obviously, as he mentioned, for selection for this Saturday. So making sure that he's happy with what they're doing in training, making sure that obviously they're not flaring up any old injuries, to make sure that they're getting fit and they're going to stay fit. So that was basically what he's been doing the past couple of weeks. And yeah, not really much else to report on from there. He was nice and clear and precise and basically said he spent the last 2 weeks working with the team that he's got in line for this Saturday. So all good there. Shaq and Willie seem to be doing quite good in training. So fingers crossed, we'll see him this weekend. He was then asked, not asked, but made aware that this was the first time that he was returning to Norwich since, obviously, him leaving, or I believe he was sacked from Norwich. Asked what he thought about that. His response was basically, I haven't, which is great to hear. He's focused for, not against. Focused for, obviously, the task at hand. We need to go there on Saturday and we need to pick up 3 points. It's basically that simple. That's what we're playing for week in and week out, is those 3 points. So when asked, you know, if he's, you know, nervous or what his thoughts are about going back and this and that and the other about the fans, they said, you know, what do you think? He responded was, I don't think. So he doesn't think. He doesn't think about Norwich. Which obviously later on in the press conference is not true. He said he's very fond of Norwich. Obviously, he's got amazing memories there, you know, taking them up, obviously, unfortunately coming down, but then taking them up again. So obviously he's got great fondness for Norwich. And I won't put that, you know, I'm not going to hold that against any manager. You know, we would love it if, you know, we had an interview where Bielsa said that he's always going to love Leeds. So it's the way it goes. But when asked about if he was, you know, concerned or what he was thinking, he said he's not really thinking. He's focused on the task at hand. We need to go there on Saturday and collect 3 points. And quite frankly, I enjoy the bluntness and I enjoy the fact that he's focused on the task at hand, which is promotion. An interesting question that obviously was thrown his way today was what is the best thing about his job, bar obviously the winning and gaining those 3 points. He says the best thing is watching all the players within training and seeing improvement. That's the whole point of what they are kind of doing over at Leeds United and what a lot of teams clearly do, taking that development. But he mentioned specifically not just developing young players, but also developing maybe more experienced players as well, which I find is very sort of profound. Don't write them off because they're experienced players. There's always things that they can improve on. So that's basically his favourite part about the job was development, which really made me smile because there's a lot of, people in our squad that could use that development and will turn into absolutely quality players. So really good question there, I thought, which was nice rather than rabbiting on about 15 minutes about Norwich when he doesn't work for them anymore, but it is what it is. The topic then moved on to Archie Gray. Obviously, Archie Gray has just played in the youth team for England, played all 3 games and all 90 minutes, so well done to Archie Gray there. Clearly had a very good performance. Farke didn't seem too happy about this, with him playing basically 5 games in 13 days. I know he's a young kid, but at the same time, you got to worry about burnout sometimes. Farke went on to kind of mention, I'll summarise it up because he rabbited on for quite a while about this, to be fair, about how you need to select what you're going for. So are you going for trophies or are you going for development? And at the end of the day, development, he didn't make a crack and he wasn't disrespectful about it, but basically said that Archie Gray on a weekend for Leeds is playing better teams than he did in the youth international side, basically, and said that playing all 3 games and all 90 minutes wasn't in his best interest, he thought, of what they want him to be as a player and what he can be as a player for that development, for him to gain that experience. At the end of the day, if he is that good, which we all know he is that good, then give him the challenge and stick him in the under-21s, and that way he wouldn't play every minute, but he'd be getting more of a challenge and developing as a player. So you'd still be competing for those trophies and for those titles, and you'd also be developing the player. So I think Farke, he was basically asked like how he deals with his players coming back off international break that are heavily involved in the international break, and basically just said it's very difficult, but at the end of the day we have to look after the player and what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to do is develop Archie into obviously a top class player, which I think we can all see that if he carries on the way he is, that's exactly where he'll go. So that's kind of a summary of what Farke said, because I think he spoke for about 8 or 9 minutes on this subject. Didn't particularly answer the question, but at the same time, it's unbelievable hard. Moving on to the topic of discussion on James and Anthony. Obviously, they've been regularly sort of subbed in for each other and asking, how they compare. Is it because they're so similar? Farke wouldn't compare. He just said they're different players, as is the likes of Bamford and Rutter. Somerville and Gnonto, and reeled off a load of players saying just because they play in the same position doesn't mean they're the same player, which is completely true. And at the end of the day, he chooses the games week by week and then chooses the game plan minute by minute as to what players that he should play and the key strengths that those players would bring to that certain game or that certain situation, and what best rounds out us getting the 3 points. So basically he kind of assesses, from second to second, saying like, okay, I'm going to start James in this because of this reason, and then if need be I'll bring on Anthony at this part if this happens. And so he's clearly got a very, very clear plan of how to use these players, and now that he's had more time training with them, clearly he's getting a more tunnel vision, so to speak, of where these players can fit in the squad and at what times they can come in. He said it's not good having to disappoint players every week, because obviously every player wants to play every minute and every second, but unfortunately as a manager that is one of the things that you have to decide. He did cap the whole sort of conversation off though, which is what I've said on the Not Another Leeds podcast and on the Just Your Football show as well, is that basically it's just nice to have options, which for the last few years we all know that we haven't had a lot of options. So it's just nice to have options now in the numerous positions, and also making those changes taking off a winger for a winger, taking off a striker for a striker. So, you know, we're not taking off strikers now and playing a centre mid. So, yeah, it's great to have options. And that's basically, he summarised all his players, basically all the first team, in how they play similar, but not the same. Part of the press conference that really annoyed me is they seem to really, really rabbit on about him at Norwich. And it's just like, they you know, as fans, we all wanted to know what we were looking forward to the weekend, what players we've got for the weekend, what kind of squad are we looking at, what kind of structure are we looking at, how have they been doing in training, which they did touch on, but not an awful lot. And the thing that frustrates me is how long they talked about Norwich. They asked him about what he thought about his exit from Norwich, in which his reply was that he wasn't going to comment about it. I don't know whether they were trying to trip him up to maybe start slagging Norwich off, which clearly he's not going to do because he seems like a really lovely person. But he wasn't going to comment about his exit from Norwich. Regardless, you know, the question was basically, do you find it unfair the way that you were released from Norwich, considering what you'd achieved? Obviously, 2 promotions, 1 relegation. So, yeah, he said he wasn't going to comment on that. I think it was a bit of a arsehole of a question, really, to be honest. We're not here to talk about Norwich and what his life was like at Norwich. He's at Leeds, and that's what we want to discuss, and that's what we want to hear. So I think it was a bit of a shirty question, to be honest. But Farke handled it really, really well and just said you know, they make the decisions that they're going to make. You know, he had older players who were on a lot of money, and obviously financially they were struggling, and, you know, mid-table side with a Premier League wage that's never going to work very well in the Championship. And of course, you know, Farke didn't say this, but like I'm saying, kind of the first finger that's pointed is at the manager. So, you know, he exited from Norwich, he's now at Leeds, we're dead happy, and that's basically that. He also asked off the cuff of this question about his exit was, does he look back and would he have done anything differently? Which again is just such, the way he looks at some of these reporters, he kind of looks at them as like, if they are a bit stupid, and why did you ask that question? Obviously he answers the question with, of course, every week, every game, you look back and there's things that you'll have seen that you would want to change. You do that when you've lost a game, when you've drawn a game, and you find that you still look at how you could have changed things. Even when you've won a game, could we have got more goals? Could we have kept a clean sheet? You know, could we have prevented some injury if I'd have done this, this and this? So of course he's going to think week to week about what he could have changed. That's his kind of whole job as a manager, because looking at that change and identifying what it is, then identifies and makes sure that you don't make that mistake next week. You know, if you've lost a game, why did we lose that game? Okay, don't do that again. Fix that problem. You pick up 3 points or a point. So yeah, the back end of the whole thing, the questions I thought were just a bit rubbish, really, because they were all about Norwich, and Farke looked a bit kind of exhausted, and he was just like, I'm not here to talk about my time there. So yeah. We're going to stop it there, though, for the press conference. That was kind of a really quick summary, although thinking quick, it probably could have been quicker. But yeah, he went on about quite a lot of stuff, and I wanted to get kind of the key points in there from what he discussed. So I won't see you at the weekend, unfortunately, because I'm not here this weekend. I will be watching the game, though, so that's absolutely fine, even if it is in the car on the way to where I'm going. So yeah. Hopefully 3 points this weekend. No new injuries, so that's good. So we can probably kind of gauge of what kind of squad we're looking at this weekend, which is the squad that we've been used to, that are doing really well together and starting to gel and move forward. So I'm begging for 3 points at the weekend. Obviously, like and subscribe and ding the bell and all that thing that YouTubers say. Leave a comment. What do you think the score is going to be? Score prediction for the next few games. Check out my previous videos as well, and obviously follow me down on X, which I still feel awkward saying in my 30s. Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. It's all down in the description. Thank you very much. I'll catch you another day, probably for hopefully a happy post-match reaction come Monday. See you later.